Welcome back to Timo's Dinky Detailing. It's time again for the Canada Day Invitational. I'm going to be working on a Dinky 430 breakdown lorry. This is based on a Commer truck, and it's not a toy that I was very much inspired by, but in this case I have the toy and it's going to be just perfect for this project. So I'm going to be taking this tow truck and making it into a very distinctively Canadian tow truck, and I'm very excited about this project. So this one comes apart kind of unusually. It has a shaft that's like an axle shaft that's been squashed at the ends that's holding it together. So I'm filing off the end and pull the shaft out, and then the whole back portion comes off. Now the base is held on very unusually with these sheet metal clips that are kind of the norm at the time with tin toys, and so I'm taking them off first with the screwdriver and peeling it up, and then I get a pair of pliers to straighten them out so that we can pull this thing out. It's very unusual for a dinky toy. I don't know if there's any others that are like this, but we'll see one day if I ever see another one. So there the base comes off. The front is held on like a hook with a number plate on the front, and this one is very rusty, but the casting looks in very good condition. And here's the back, and this one also has the gantry system there for towing cars, and it's held on with sheet metal. So they're twisted, those little tabs, and I straighten them out and I can pull this one off, and the back part has kind of a hook thing which isn't twisted. Now this has two little shafts in it. This one is for the winder, which is the crank handle, so that you can it's like a little crane, and the crank handle is peened in. You probably could take that thing off, but I'm not going to. And this is all the steel stuff. So I'm going to put the base into the evapor rust and the crank handle and the whole gantry portion into evapor rust and leave that. And meanwhile, I'm going to strip the paint off of the rest of the casting. This is spring in Canada. The pool is open, it's heated, we've been swimming for a couple weeks, and it snowed. So that's just the way it is in Canada. So pulling these things out of the evapor rust, you can see it's taking some of the bluing off of that sheet metal gantry. The crank handle has all the rust removed and it looks beautiful. And here's the paint stripped castings. And this casting is interesting. It still has some of the flash from the factory. So I take those off. There are a few other pieces. I'm not going to show every bit. And then here's the casting flashing as well, and that has to be sanded and smoothed because that's going to interfere with the look of the final model. Now goes into the wire brush. This is going to be, it's not going to be restored to the original style. This is going to be detailed into a new model altogether, but I love this casting after stripping it and fixing up the flashing and the cavities in the casting, and put the first coat of primer on there. I'm falling in love with this thing. I never liked this casting because I think just the way that Dinky did it with the colors and the decal on it is not that impressive, but I feel like I'm going to be able to make this into something much more beautiful and much more Canadian. Now fortunately I do my models on mostly 50s castings, and this is indeed a 50s casting, and I'm setting it up as a 1955 casting, and I'm not sure, this is a Commer truck that this is based on, but the fortunate thing is that it looks identical to American style trucks at the time. So as a tow truck, you could put this on an American street and nobody would notice it because it looks exactly like an American tow truck would look, which is terrific for my project because I'm going to make this thing Canadian. So here's the paint I'm mixing up. It's orange, and this is for very special Canadian. Now, Andrew has created this annual Canada Day project, and I'm not making it red and white, which is the rule. There's one rule, and I've broken it. Andrew was saying, why would you need to break it? Did you spill green paint on it? Well, I spilled orange paint on it. So this thing is getting an orange body, and it's, believe me, even though it's not going to be red and white, there will be red and white on it, so technically I suppose it's acceptable, but it's going to be orange, and it's going to be orange in the most Canadian way possible. Now, my primary camera is an old cell phone, and its color balance isn't the greatest, so through most of this project it looks like it's red and white, so maybe that's a good thing. It's going to be Canada Day because even though it's orange, it looks on the video a lot of the time like it's red and white. So this one now, the taping job, this is going to have the fenders separate color. So I speeded this up a lot because it was a huge amount of work to tape this thing. It's a nightmare tape job, but the fenders are going to be black. So I go into the paint booth. You can see my paint booth has changed a little bit. This is a kind of an interstitial phase of the paint booth, and they've got a filter at the back, and I've got a new fan. I should probably do another video just to show you how my new paint booth looks. So here I'm taking the tape off. That's a lot of tape. It takes a long time to do this carefully and to get all of the tape off. Very difficult taping job. Maybe this is the most difficult one I've done. It doesn't look difficult, but when you're looking at the tape coming off, you get the idea. Now, I put a lot of work into this, but even then, some of the spray got through from where it was supposed to go and got onto the orange parts of the model, and you're going to see that in a second. Now, I taped up for a door logo with the white, and turns out that was a mistake. There you can see some overspray. So for the overspray, I just go on with a little bit of super fine sandpaper, and I sand it off. There was enough orange paint there I can sand it off. So now we go to the 3D printer, and there's a number of things I'm printing on this model. In this case, we're looking at the seats. What's cool is that I measured up the model, I designed the seats, and this is the first attempt. So it comes out of the printer, it goes into the ultraviolet light, which hardens it, and let's see if the darn thing fits into the model. You can download this from the link below. First try, fits absolutely perfectly. Even though it fit perfectly, I fixed it up still and made it better. I put in a stick shift, and I put in some detail on the door panel so it looks like it has handles. Nobody's going to see that stuff, but I wanted to put it there anyway. Now here's another thing. Wanted to have special wheels. These trucks had these special truck wheels with the castings inside, and the rims are bolted to them. And I tried to do them in one piece, and I couldn't paint them properly, so I decided I'm going to do it in two pieces. So I printed up the rim separately from the centers. I painted the centers and then pushed them into place. That was a lot of work to get the right size, but there you have it. It's perfect. So I glued it from behind with super glue and pressed them into the tires. I chose white tires in this case. I got these tires from Steve Flowers, and I could have used black wheels or tires, and I did test them with black tires, and I like the white better in this case because I want this thing to look flashy because, hey, it's a special celebration. It's Dominion Day. Oh yeah, by the way, this is a 50s model. In the 50s, it wasn't Canada Day, it was Dominion Day because it was the Dominion of Canada. So I'm going with that. Most of my models are from the 50s, so I have to kind of stick with the 50s theme. So I cut these axles out of pop rivets because they're exactly the right diameter. These ones happen to be aluminum, just easier to work with. And I got my printed wheels and tires, and I can glue these together. And because they're these independent wheel and axle assemblies, it's very easy to work with these. I use the parallel clamp to hold them. They're not really clamped on much, they're just holding them so that they're parallel. So here I go in with some clear coating. This is Mr. Hobby that I like to use. And it gets its first clear coat. It's going to get another coat after the decals go on. Supertest. This is a company that was started by John Gordon Thompson with his friend James D. Good, and they bought for $10,000 the Energy Oil Company, and they made out of it Supertest. This was in London, Ontario, and they bought their gasoline from Standard Oil and all their products. They had oils and everything, and they expanded gasoline stations across Ontario, and eventually they reached as far as Calgary, Alberta. It was a terrific gas station company. You could get all sorts of services from them, including towing services and car service, oil changes and repairs and all that kind of stuff. So it was fabulous. I remember the company. We used to go there and buy gas from time to time, and I knew it was a Canadian company, and so I always enjoyed being able to go to a real Canadian gas station, and we don't have that anymore. The company lasted for some time. In 1971 or so, they sold the company to British Petroleum, and that's when it disappeared. So here I've polished my crank handle, and there's my the gantry system, and we fit that crank handle in there. I filed off the end of this thing, but it popped through and it stays in there, and I don't want to hammer at it, so I didn't. Same thing with the shaft at the end. I just pushed it back in place. Now I needed decals, so I went to Joshua Muma and Bedlam Decals, and here they've arrived. I designed my own decals. And oh, what's this in here? Oh, remember to like, share, and subscribe. So here's the decals, and you can look up the company. I'm going to post them below, so you can get decals from. He's printing decals that have white on them, and they're transparent decals, and that's what I was looking for. And I found his company, and so I designed my own decals and sent them off to him, and he printed these beautiful decals, and they have white. He prints with white so that they go over. And I'd painted this thing with those white spaces. I didn't really need to, but I'd done it before I discovered his company. So because I'm doing the white, much of the decoration is in white onto the orange surface. Because why wouldn't you do that? You buy a certain size. You can see I bought a very small piece in this case, and but he can print white that I can't do. And it's not terribly expensive, and he did a beautiful job, and these things look just fantastic. And I'm so excited because next time I have another project, I'm going to be using him to print my decals. It's not very expensive to get these decals. I designed them myself and sent the graphics off to Bedlam Creations, and I've included the link below so you can order them yourself if you like from Josh Momo. And it's beautiful because I can make my own decals, but I can't print white. So in all cases where I'm going to need to print white, I'm going to be able to order decals from him, and it's just fabulous. They really are a joy to work with. And you'll be able to do that too. And it's going to change the way I make models. So these decals go on just beautifully, and they look stunning, and they're my design, which is just fabulous. So nobody else has this design. So after putting the decals on, another coat of the clear coat, and again I'm using the Mr. Hobby clear coating. So these are decals that I printed myself, the license plate. And the next one, we have the American Automobile Association, the Canadian Automobile Association. Back in the day, it was the Dominion Automobile Association. So I put a decal on to represent that. And here I put a steering wheel into the seats. I glue it on with some white glue. And I got the russet paint out and paint the shift knob in russet. These are, I printed with the clear resin some beacons, and I want to paint them with the clear red. I put the leveling thinner just as I would with any other paint job. And into the spray booth and put the clear coat and make them red. And then later I cover them also with some lacquer to protect them. Here I machined, I don't show you everything, I want to keep these videos shorter, but I machined a little brass ring on the lathe onto the smallest beacon I was able to print, and it's beautiful. So now it's time to assemble. So I put the gantry onto this rear part of the model, and get out the pliers and twist them just like the old tin toys back in the day. And now to put those tail lights on. Probably could have gotten away with this, but I really wanted to put a license plate on this model. So this one has the license plate and the tail lights, so I put a little support there, which is my stirring stick, and get it in the right place, and then let the glue dry. I make it look like this whole thing's taking place in one day, but when I do this, I gotta let it dry overnight. So time for detailing. Here I'm putting the chrome paint onto the headlights and onto the front grille. And I've speeded this up a lot. I want my videos to go a little bit faster. So it's fun still to watch me brushing it on, but don't need to see it in real time. Let's do it in time lapse, not time lapse, what do you call it? Where it's really fast. So I put my indicator lights on, and then inside the silver part I put in my white headlights, which I like to do because it makes the headlights look like they're on. And now out of the vise, and I can do the little marker lights and the door handles. Not a lot of detail, even if you want to do detail on this model, because it's fairly simple. So it's time to assemble this model. And I take my floating axle. Oh, wait a minute. Put the windshield and the seats in first. And there's my floating axle, front and rear, and the base. Now I know I knocked the front axle out of the slot, and you can see it's crooked there, but I didn't even notice it, and I put the thing on, and then I straightened it up later, and it didn't matter because that base is kind of like a huge spring. So it didn't really affect the front axle. So I bent these tabs back down again. You can see I put some tape on the pliers. Didn't want to strip too much paint off, even though nobody's ever going to see this. It's completely covered by the whole bed of the truck. There, I've straightened the front wheel. And I put the bed on, and the bed is held on again with this thin axle shaft. And I had a lot of trouble pressing this in, and finally I got it in using the pliers, and I didn't have to squeeze the end because, man, this thing was tight. It's not coming apart. So after putting it in, I just left it the way it was. So now it's time to put a cable in here to hold the hook. So I've got this string that's kind of metallic, and it's a nightmare to work with. Anyway, I cut it short, and it wants to come all unstranded. So here I'm putting spit on it and get it in through the hook. And man, it's a challenge. So there it's through. Tie a knot in it. Nothing fancy. And then cut off the excess. I actually wound up putting a dab of crazy glue on there to make sure it doesn't come unraveled. So here is the final step, a little bit of white glue, and the last step is, of course, the cherry on top. So just to remind you where we started, this is the original toy, and I mean the casting's in good shape. Obviously needs to be painted and restored, and let's see what it looks like now. Alright, now it looks great. I remember Supertest when I was a child. I remember going and buying gas in this gas station that was Supertest, and knowing that it was Canadian, it just made me feel good. It's sad that Supertest is gone now, but they had a fantastic name and beautiful colors and logo and insignia with the maple leaf and everything. To me, this is one of the greatest things in Canadian history, was this really cool company, and I'm sad to see it go. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. It's the Dominion Day episode. I got one little final glamour shot of the Supertest tow truck in front of a Supertest station. So until next time, be seeing you.